Our flood happened, or our waters crested, on June 13th, 2008, and at the EOC, the mayor announced, very clearly that this was a horrific event. However, Cedar Rapids would recover stronger and better, and that was really the focus. And within 3 days, the council sat down with the city manager and a number of department directors and a couple of consultants, and really framed up the components of that vision. The interests were to put together a plan for flood protection so that an event like this wouldn't affect the community again, devastate the community, put together a plan for housing recovery, business recovery, and obviously public facilities. In 2008, the disaster ranked, I think, 5th nationally. We did 3 things at a staff level. We did a self-assessment of how the community has performed in the past. We reached out to other communities that have been successful in disaster recovery, really to learn what did they do well and what are the things that we can avoid. And then third, we did a quick assessment of what kind of infrastructure do we have in place in order to do this type of work. Were our teams well versed in process improvement and program design? Did our teams have an understanding of program evaluation? Really, that vision for recovery was like any typical plan for what do you want your community to look like in 10 or 15 years. And we framed that around the tagline of building a greater community for our kids' kids. And in that rapid process of public engagement, we're also very committed to transparency because of the previous concerns under the previous form of government. So in 3 open houses, we asked the community to come in and invited them to take a look at what is the problem that our community is facing that's causing this risk of flooding, and really invited them to help us frame up and define that problem. In the second open house, we asked them to engage on what are appropriate solutions or approaches to solve this problem. Do we want to create a city of walls to hold out the water, or do we want to provide more room for the river to flow, understanding that that's going to impact neighborhoods, it's going to impact people's homes. Once we had that policy approved by council in November, we had about 3,000 people participate, and they could go online and see their verbatim written comments. It was transparent. We held many meetings for folks to engage and participate. We moved next to the neighborhood revitalization. Ultimately, the plan led to 230 acres of new green space and 7.5 miles of structural and non-structural measures, flood walls, and levees. We secured, the council approved the plan, and we moved quickly to a neighborhood dialogue about how do we restore and build thriving neighborhoods in the 10 impacted areas, so that our kids would choose those neighborhoods. Iowa has struggled with retaining population and attracting next geners, and it's something we talked about before the flood. So this was a great opportunity to tee up that issue again. How do we make the river an amenity? How do we continue to drive hazard mitigation? How do we ensure that property owners in the flood impacted area, are aware of the risk and secure flood insurance? And we had all these dialogues. But I'll say that the first thing that we really wanted to do in that neighborhood dialogue was afford people the opportunity to tell their stories of pain and loss. We organized the neighborhood planning process in 8 different meetings over the course of 4 months, and each one of those meetings started with a dialogue where a residential property owner might be seated across from a business owner, might be seated across from a local official, but where people could tell their stories, because we knew that they would need to tell their stories many, 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 many times. And I think the other thing too, people came to those meetings because they were still needing services. I mean, we were building relationships and also developing new leaders in the community. And the more that we could educate, we knew that those people would go out and educate others and give good information, because good information is a challenge in the midst of a disaster. It's so complex. So over the course of 8 meetings, we came up with 10 neighborhood plans, kind of in an unprecedented timeline. But I think what we did differently was used a very interest-based dialogue. We had a number of discussions with our staff team and consultant team. We did not want a perfect plan. We wanted the best technical options, but those needed to be mixed and matched, and the selection what really rests in the hands of the community, because politics is a real issue that you have to deal with. But also, we use the plans to demonstrate progress. So every 6 months, every year, we would report on where we were with those plans and the types of progress that we made. And they also became great vehicles for problem solving. I think in the shift of a very politically organized community to a professionally run or led community, we really embraced our technical tools, and we moved from kind of maybe a blaming or critical environment to a very focused problem-solving environment. And those vehicles again were project management tools, program evaluation. It's not about the people; it's about the situation. With that, we developed very strong working relationships which we didn't have pre-flood with state and federal officials. And we did also move to a very strategic focus, where when we were dealing with situations, we learned early on that we couldn't just toss a problem to a neighborhood, to an elected body, to state or federal officials. We did what we did in the public engagement. We framed up what are the problems, and we would propose options. We would say, State of Iowa, here are 3 ways we think you can solve our problem. And here are the pros and cons to those options. We like number 2, but we're open to all 3. And we did that similar work with the federal government. We hit a number of very visible milestones in Cedar Rapids. There were a variety of buildings that were completed, ribbon cuttings. In one neighborhood alone, we saw more than $22 million of investment, which we would say that's a relatively short window of time. And anecdotally, I heard from members of the community that had been involved in the planning process, were very vocal in supporting or opposing different projects. Say things like, I just didn't believe that this community could look as beautiful as it looks. I didn't believe we could recover the way that we've recovered. But I do think that that disciplined approach of having a long-term plan, a long-term vision, having a structure for decision making. If your community doesn't have that now, start working on it. But if it does, sharpen it. If that means you need more boards and commissions, you need more task forces, maybe you need less. Maybe you need a safe place for your council to meet and deliberate and learn about tough public policy, so that they're ready to make tough decisions. Because none of these decisions are easy, and none of this is easy. It's hard. You just got to face it. It's hard, and it's your job, and you've got to do it. Excuse me. And then I think finally, if you don't have a good strategy or ability to implement, you got to figure that out now. But implementation buys you the full faith and credit of the public. The more that you can implement and deliver on the vision that they've set forward, the more confidence and trust they have in you. And I think the working relationship grows. We really saw some neighborhood leaders who started in our community opposing the planning, opposing the construction study area, within a 4 or 5 year time period, saying to us, what can I do to help?